at 9 cards. So there's a lot of different options once we get into that. But I would say that Rami should be quite a bit of a favorite in game 1 because Muzzy just lacks the removal to deal with Jiraxis. But then games 2 and 3 are where things get incredibly interesting because both players go pretty heavy on the greed.
That's right. As we get ready for game number 1, I like the comments that you brought up about Devouring Plague. Speaking of, that is our fact for today in history. Back in 1980, on May 5th, or 1980, excuse me, it was following a global vaccination program. The World Health Organization declared that smallpox was eradicated. It was one of the world's most dreaded plagues for quite some time, and now has been replaced by the epidemic known as Priest in Hearthstone. Armor Vendor on turn 1, Rami, of course. Ooh, by the way, rocking a nice little beanie hat. And I was kind of used to Rami wearing the fun accessories with like gloves and whatnot. It looks like he also might be in a different location than usual. But either way, Rami is really fun to watch. Very emotive, expressive, clearly puts a lot of hard work in, very passionate about it. Also been getting a lot of momentum, right? 7 points, very close to the top of the standings, which has been a pleasant surprise. We talk a lot about the potential of the newcomers, but when they can live up to it, it's great. And we've seen that with No Hands Gamer and even, you know, other players who had cracked the system before that, like Language Hacker, who had been very consistent. And now it's great to see players from Latin America do the same here, TJ.
Yeah, it really is. And Rami honestly had some struggles in his first season as a Grandmaster. And it's just really cool to see how he's been able to kind of turn things around and go from, you know, 1 or 2 matches away from relegation to now a potential to end the week in first place. So been very pleasantly surprised with that. And moving forward in this match, again, fatigue is on both players' minds, right? That's the kind of the biggest thing that we're looking at in this match, because outside of just Jiraxis, Warlock's not really going to kill the Priest. They have too many control tools. So it's how late can they go in the game? How does Muzzy manage his removal to be able to deal with Jiraxis? Can he make a push when Rami starts to use his resources pretty aggressively in the later stages of the game? Muzzy just wants to hope that Jiraxis is really far down towards the bottom of the deck and that he doesn't burn anything substantial from Ticketus if that's able to get corrupted.
That's right. He's not playing any card like Harrison Jones despite wearing a hat in inspiration of it. And nor does he want to do that against his opponent's Jiraxis, even if he did have it, right? As we talked about, drawing too far deep into the deck, Warlock is in a position to capitalize in the late stages of the game. Rami's going to discover a spell off the Venomous Scorpid, finds an opportunity to get even more value, which is Initiation. I wonder if Thrive in the Shadows tempts Muzzy at all, given that it would give him a opportunity to have a removal spell, but it does draw deeper just ever so slightly, because it's not discover a copy of a spell like some other cards did in the past. This is just a spell in general, so you have to be mindful with Muzzy when you time for that card.
Yeah, it can be difficult. A lot of times Insight and Thrive in the Shadows, when you know Fatigue is like the only win condition, right. You just don't play those cards unless you're in a desperate situation. But I think Muzzy realizing that without a solid tempo start, that it's very likely he's going to have to try and either try and get something big with Mind Render or Lucia, or try and find some way to kill Rami at some point in this game, which is very difficult.
Yeah, and Rami prioritizing not even trading into the Venomous Scorpid, inviting Muzzy to take some trades that are pretty favorable for him if he wants to keep the Scorpid even alive, but more importantly, making it more complicated if Muzzy were to play another minion, right? Because Rami is aware of the possibility that with Draconic Studies being played, Honest Maze Scribe can come out very quickly, has the opportunity to maybe trade into it if Muzzy doesn't end up going for the trade on the Scorpids. So this is kind of dynamic for Rami, just pushing a little bit extra, chipping that armor away. I like it. And now Muzzy's going to move to get these immediate spell burst activation with Desperate Prayer. The healing is not important, but the spells could be finds Focus Will and Psyche Split. How useful are those cards in this matchup, DJ?
I mean, Psyche Split can be incredibly useful because you're in a situation where, Rami's primary deck does lack a little bit of the removal, I believe. Let me just make sure I'm looking at the right list, like Cascading Disaster, for example. But it can be very tough to use because there's not many situations where you're going to be left with a minion on board. In this case, though, Rami really just wants to play this Golem, and I don't know exactly what the Golem choices were, so I don't know if he can actually clear the board here. But at least he can drop down an Ogremancer, and Muzzy now has an opportunity to play Psyche Split, and even though there's an Ogremancer on the side of the board, that's still a lot of power that would be available to him that can contest the Ogremancer going into the next turn. And yeah, just double checked, obviously because he's playing Kazakus, there is no Cascading Disaster in this list, which opens up a lot of opportunity for Muzzy to stick some big minions.
Yeah, just has to figure out a very good way to deal with the Ogremancer. There's a couple of ways. I'm thinking about Focus Will, but that is not exactly the way you want to go about it. There's no other reliable way, it looks like, to do that. He could end up digging for more spells with Palm Reading or with Renew, but that also does not exactly guarantee what he wants out of it. So I am curious how Muzzy chooses to go about it, if he just chooses to prioritize the tempo with Psyche Split. It looks like he will immediately kill off this 2-2. Now, what's interesting about it is that if Rami chooses to commit to board removal, I mean, with things like the Hysteria and this Onish Mage Tribe's being so beefy, there's a very good chance that Rami actually loses his entire board as well, which he's not really, fond of. With Warlock, you don't want to have to use your removal spells unless you're forced to. It's one of those situations where the more you can instead greed and have all these resources, the better positioned you are. I think I see a lot of Warlocks on ladder when I go up against some players at Legend. They just, it feels like they still throw their resources a little bit too liberally. And not focus too much on what they're trying to do in the late stages of the game. They're so worried about protecting their life total. There's a lot of life gain in Warlock. It's okay. Don't be afraid to take a hit or two.
Yeah, there's also times when your removal just doesn't really work out, right? Where you have you have a lot of broad removal, but School Spirits only deals 2 damage. Hysteria, there's not always an Hysteriable board. Twisting Nether is kind of the catch-all, but it's very expensive. And when you're looking at a situation like this, where it's quite early on in the game, it can be difficult. And probably mouse over Hysteria there a little bit. Maybe they could have played like Tamsin Rome Hysteria, but I don't think he wants to lose his board yet, because Ogremancer is such a fantastic tool to deal with priests. They often don't have ways to remove it unless they already have board. And even though Muzzy has board right now, the Talon Forging just makes things incredibly awkward.
Yeah, and heads up play, of course, to not attack. We talked a little bit about the Devouring Plague interaction. Doesn't want to give easy ways for Muzzy to heal back up. And as a result, be able to play a Flesh Giant for very cheap. He is not well prepared. If he had trouble dealing with a couple of 6 drops at this stat line, the 8/8 Giants are going to be even more problematic. So a nice heads up play there. Now, Muzzy knows that Rami knows about it. How does he best go about it on his end? There still is that Ogremancer to deal with, which is very annoying. Can deal with part of the board slightly still with some silence effects. And it seems like Muzzy's just going to extend further onto the board, softening things up and trading into the Talon Forging, which ends up giving Rami that Sociologist. And now Rami can potentially go off on this turn. Starting off the Tamsin Rome, Demonic Studies finds Envoy Rustwix, Midway Maniac, Disguised Wanderer. The Rustwix, I mean, that card can be very powerful in these fatigue scenarios. I mean, that's one of the best cards to pick up as the Warlock.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only does, like you said, prevent fatigue, but it's also just putting high power minions in your deck. And sometimes it can work against you if you're not picking up the most, but the majority of them are fantastic. It's just sometimes it can delay Jiraxis, which is like the main win condition, right? 6/6 every turn is better than a lot of the Prime's effects. But again, still a good amount of just straight up board tension going on right now. And Rami will lose his board, but he's just going to try and set up the best possible situation with this wide amount of removal suite that he has in his hand.
Yep. Looks like he has mapped out the Hysteria. Oh my goodness. Okay, so it was a 1 out of 3 twice in a row. So, you know, very unfortunate for Muzzy, but also not out of the world of possibility. It just, of course, visually looks very upsetting. If I was Muzzy, I would definitely be fighting off the tilt right now. Thumbs up to the camera. I mean, that's all you can really do. It's like, cool, that's great. Not like I want to kill that Ogremancer anyways.
Oh, this is brutal. Still too early in the game for Mind Render or Lucia. Usually you want to play it like on 9 to try and rip the Ticketus. The discount on the Ticketus, it costs 4 right now, but it won't cost 4 for Muzzy since the Demonic Studies discount doesn't apply to Muzzy since he was the one that played them. It applies to the player, not to the deck. And the Demonic Studies with the Tamsuroma ended up being even double good because now Rami gets to corrupt the Ticketus a lot easier. It'll corrupt with a 5 mana card instead of a 7+ mana card. So he's going to be able to corrupt that, and then just corrupting it alone means that Mind Render is no longer a possibility to take the Ticketus away because you're switching decks, so you'd still destroy your own cards if you were to Mind Render Lucia in that situation.
Yeah, definitely a heads-up call if we end up getting to that stage. Rami picks up Twisting Nether. So, do we know what the Golem is on Rami's side?
No idea.
I think we're about to find out. Rush, deal 3 damage to 2 random enemy minions. Okay.
Yeah. Not the best, but it corrupts the Ticketus, and I think that's the most important thing for Rami to consider there. So, because he is approaching turn 9, he doesn't want to get into an awkward position. I'm sure Ticketus is going to come out next turn. Pretty much no matter what. I can't imagine a situation unless Muzzy goes crazy on board that it wouldn't.
Well, the good news for Muzzy is that he now has opportunity to play spells a lot more aggressively, right? He could dig with Renew if he wants to start things off, or Palm Reading, or even just collect more spells off his Anj Maze Scribe. He is very much in the comfort zone of where he wants to be in terms of amount of pressure on the board. I mean, there is a 5-attack minion, but it's not the most threatening situation. So he starts things off with the Draconic Studies, finds pretty decent mid-range minion, Dragon Maw, Skystalker. It's pretty okay, but I'm looking at his hand. I think he just needs to get a little bit better. Just if there's anything else that he can find that's particularly useful here.
Picks Holy Smite instead of another Palm Reading.
Yeah, I think he anticipates next turn he probably will need to start clearing off the board a little bit. So,
yeah.
You know, he has the ability to do Palm Reading, then have a free Holy Smite, as opposed to having another Palm Reading for 2 mana. How many Soul Fragments are in Rami's deck right now? At least
there are 2.
4. 4?
Yeah. No, there's only 2.
Oh, because he didn't duplicate the School Spirits. Okay.
Yeah, only 2. So not the best Sociologist Militia. I honestly think he can just get away with a Ticketus here.
I like it. You know, the earlier you play Ticketus, the more disruptive it is to your opponent. Because you're assuming that your opponent's trying to hold on to cards and time it accordingly. And look at Ticketus hit the board. 4 mana, 8/8. More importantly, remove the top 5 cards from your opponent's deck. Renew, the Plague, Flesh Giant, Zyrella. and the Wand Maker. That's a pretty good haul from Rami's side. And Muzzy now 8 cards deeper than Rami in that fatigue. And we talked about how, Priest has a lot of resource generation, but, the limiting factor in a lot of times in these tight situations and these control back and forth is the time because of the fatigue. It accelerates, and that clock is running. Tick. What are you gonna do, Muzzy? Talk. Gotta make a choice. Tick. At this. I'm gonna miss Scorpion.
Honestly, I'm trying to find ways for Muzzy to win. He still has Ysera in his deck. Obviously, Onyx Mage Scribe can do some crazy things, but he needs that X factor, right? I think Solmir's probably the only real choice here. He's Burn Cyrella. Disrepair doesn't have much. Gift of Luminance, maybe he can Gift of Luminance a Sethic Veilweaver and try and get some additional value that way.
When you have to use that kind of removal hysteria and not make any headway on the board. Yeah. And now from Rami's perspective, start tapping, start playing stuff. He does have to be mindful of his Envoy as well. As much as it's great to play it and to try to push damage in other matchups, Priest is a class you have to be very mindful of how you utilize it. But at the same time, if he holds on too long, that is an opportunity for Muzzy to capitalize off that Mind Render of Lucia and get on his side of the board. And Lord knows how many ways that Priest can duplicate that process in the meantime, right? We saw one Psychic Split already. If Muzzy knows about things like the Envoy and getting a bunch of primes in his deck, I mean, who knows what his Renew could pick up to potentially find ways to really fudge those late game fatigue numbers.
I brought enough for everyone.
Yeah, even an initiation. If he just plays an Envoy Rustwix on the board, he gives that over to Muzzy. Muzzy has a good amount of generated spells in hand right now, so it's not out of the realm of possibility for that to happen. And honestly, there's no rush for Rami to play it. He might be looking to play it on a Hysteria turn just to be able to make sure that he gets the value from it, gets it shuffled into his own deck. But he definitely has late game locked. Drax isn't picked up yet, but it will be picked up by the end of this game, certainly.
That is the plan. Ooh. Shadow Form. We've seen a couple of Shadow Forms played yesterday, and it was interesting. Muzzy's going to go ahead and rip it. I mean, sure. It's going to add a little bit of pressure, and more importantly, maybe he can find ways to remove minions without having to spend a ton of resources like he's been doing. And now Rami is going to just systematically remove this Onyx Mage Scribe, can continue to draw deeper into his deck as well. Oh, that's right, he has Associates Militia. Can go ahead and start pressuring the board state, force Muzzy to use a bunch of more removal, and just continue to make sure that there's nothing that Muzzy can do to capitalize onto the board state. Don't let the Priest stick the minion. We know what Priest can do. They love having those buff cards. So the more you can keep their options limited, the less that they'll have that breathing room to be able to find alternative win conditions.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And as long as he keeps Muzzy's resources occupied, even though Muzzy has a good clear from this, that's a success for Rami. He's just trying to prolong this game as long as possible, just to try and run Muzzy completely out of resources.
Oh, the initiation. I mean, Rami's happy to see that, though. Because that initiation won't go on another more valuable minion. Sociologist, it's just a 5/5. It's not super impactful. Versus some of the other minions that Rami had, like this Envoy, and he could use the Hysteria. You called it, TJ, and it looks like that's what is going to happen here. But at the same time, there's no read from Muzzy that it would be an Envoy. He just knows that that's another demon. So you can't really fault Muzzy at all for not going for that. That does represent how the situation is increasingly getting worse with each passing turn. Now Rami is double that ahead of the fatigue race, 9 to 18 cards, as he immediately finds Conrethid Prime. in a demon deck. Oh my goodness.
Yep, that'll bring back the Envoy Rustwicks potentially. I do think that he's played Ticketus, he's played Envoy Rustwicks.
Magic is not a toy.
Actually, there
think
hasn't
that's it.
been. Yeah. Because he hasn't played Spirit Jailers. He played the Scavenging Shivara as well, which is a demon.
Yes, that is true.
But that's only 3, so it's curated now. Like, he could play it right now, get another Envoy Rustwicks, and actually some pretty impactful minions.
Yeah, I would be slightly afraid of that situation we described as well, which is Priest then can start responding to it. Soul Mirror is something to keep in mind. And so, from Rami's perspective, do you have to play Kenrith it, right? Like, that's one of those questions.
I mean, the Soul Mirror is not in Muzzy's main deck. So that's one thing to consider. Muzzy doesn't play a natural Soul Mirror. He just got the copy of Soul Mirror that he has in his hand from, I believe, a Palm Reading or Sun Discover. Oh, wow. Okay. So obviously he drew a Soul Fragment, but then the Soul Fragment reads, draw a card after the effect goes off. So draws Jaraxxus from that. So now, as long as Rami has a clear board next turn, Jaraxxus can come out.
Totally. And, with the Shadow form in place, all the more reason to praise the heavens that Lord Jaraxxus does not set your health to 15 anymore. Muzzy finds another initiation. Just stealing all the minions, summoning on his side. Not the cleanest board, given that your opponent has the Lady Vaj. But Rami does have the ability to play that and the Drain Soul. He's at full life, so you can remove it with the Blood Fury and the attack. But more importantly, what does Muzzy do to try to challenge this Jaraxxus now? He finds Ysera. Doesn't have the hand space for all the dream cards. Not exactly the best time to play Ysera unless you're okay with losing, half of her value.
Yes.
So, do we perhaps dig with Renew first?
Yeah, it's really the only thing. I mean, Mind Render timing, I'm trying to figure out, but he's seen Ticketus. Jaraxxus is not possible to be Mind Rendered anyway. I wonder when the timing is for that. I think he wants to slim down his own hand of value and then Mind Render like late in the game once Rami has resources and he does not.
Yeah, now Muzzy's thinking about which of these cards are even that helpful. Desperate Prayer, I mean, it's useful for ways to survive against aggression, ways to activate your Honest Mage Scribe, but he's already done that. Soul Mirror, he already has one, and it doesn't really solve the issue of what do you do long term, because it ends up just being a way to respond to your opponent's 6/6. Might be a way for him to generate some tempo though. If Rami, plays Kenrith, for example, a couple demons pop up and that Envoy comes out, and we mentioned that hidden information is going to be very annoying for Rami to have to play around. Let's pick up the Spirit Jailer. Going to go with the Demonic Study, see if he can find another powerful demon. Oh, yep, Dread Infernal.
Okay, Dread Infernal's pretty good. So yeah, I think Rami is still just fine to make a 6/6 every turn, not try and make a powerful play, right? You mentioned hidden information. He doesn't want to give Muzzy any room to try and swing this back. Muzzy only has 5 cards left. Rami still has double Twisting Nether, Hysteria, School Spirits, double Drain Soul. There's no reason for him to really do anything except for make a 6/6 every turn and respect the board a tiny bit. Play around like Ysera lethals with Nightmare. And that's about it.
Ooh, Psyche Split. Wait, is there anything that's good with Rally? I don't think so. It's not that kind of deck with Sethek Veil Weavers going off. Renew is kind of like another opportunity to look at a spell if you don't like the others. That's what he's going to go for. Nice application of Soulmere, getting the activation after the 2/2 gets summoned, so he doesn't get blocked by that. Can kill off the Ogremancer and hero power down. Very nice turn here from Muzzy. Rami has to deal with the board, but he's got so many ways to do it. He's got 2 Twisting Nether, a handful of removal damage spells, as well as even some minions that deal damage onto the board. I do worry that if he plays too many things like Spirit Jailers, that his Kenrithid Prime then becomes even more disappointing, right? It's, I guess, on the one hand, you don't give Envoy to your opponent, but on the other, you get 1/3s.
Yeah.
Oh. Oh, so he's going to use the discount and then Hysteria? Oh. Okay. Oh, he can Drain Soul it. I like that.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I was going to say, based on how Rami's been playing, he would never do this play if he wasn't going to kill off his own Rustwicks. He doesn't want to give Muzzy any opportunity to come back. There's just no reason to. He's even though it may not seem like it, he is just so far ahead in the matchup. Looking at the remainder of his deck. Wait, what? Okay, yeah, he has 5 Soul Fragments, so that actually makes up a lot of the fatigue. And then double Void Drinker, Lucky Soul Hoarder, Armor Vendor, and 6 random Primes.
True. Wow. Another Soul Mirror if Muzzy wants. That raised dead is also interesting to me. He's had a lot of interesting minions die on his side because of things like Initiation and Soul Mirror, but you know, there's also like the 2/2 Ogremancer taunts. So, you know, raised dead feels like it doesn't have that much impact, if anything, at all. And Muzzy picks up Holy Nova. Meh. Does he want to use Apotheosis here so that he can get an extra spell?
He does still have another Sethic, so it's not like the biggest of deals, right?
Right, and he might need that lifesteal in the late game instead of just throwing it out to swap it for a random priest card.
Yeah.
Oh, another Vosh Prime. That's, you know, the first one was already kind of dubious. This one just feels bad.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about with some of the primes just don't have that great effect in the matchup. I mean, right now it will just literally draw him a single card. It'll pull 3 Soul Fragments out of his deck and then draw... I guess it'll draw a card off of each of those, so it still could end up drawing him 3 cards, which I don't think is something he wants to do, because the only spells he has left in his deck are Soul Fragments. So looks like maybe Hysteria and use the Weapon Swing to preserve the Drain Soul, just try and make the best use out of this Blood Fury as possible, and then again make a 6/6.
Oh, Vosh Prime.
Okay.
Right?
Yep, so then I'll draw another spell and then a minion. Or no, that drew a spell as well. So it actually still has 2 more spell draws, right? This Soul Fragment, and then draw another card. And then another Soul Fragment, and then draw another card. Okay, so his last 3 cards are a Void Drinker and or his last 4 cards are a Void Drinker and 3 Primes.
Right. He has
But
the
he
Void
equalized
Drinker
fatigue.
activation. Yeah, he equalized fatigue. He does have the activation for the Void Drinker through the Spirit Jailer. Rami did put... I mean, he is applying pressure this way. I felt like he could have done the same thing just by hero powering, because the 6/6 is better than the 5/4. The spell damage only really impacts the Drain Soul, and that's not even super important. So I am curious what Rami's thinking about. Perhaps he feels like he just wants to draw closer to his primes.
Yeah, just try and win off of tempo, I suppose. I mean, fatigue is... Muzzy's still like a card behind, right? It's still sort of equalized.
Whoa.
Oh, is that a Michigan?
Man.
Oh, yeah.
Mishfin Prime. Oh, that's right. He also has a Lucky Soul Hoarder as well. Hero
Find these in
power.
without using Void Drinkers makes it so there's a potential for Rami to just draw all of his Soul Fragments next turn, interrupting or throwing away some of the healing, as well as maybe shutting off Void Drinker, which he still has 2 left.
Right. I'm curious about that as well. I don't want him to be stuck with Void Drinkers in the hand and unable to do anything with them outside of just playing it without its battle cry.
Yeah.
Guide my hand.
So Muzzy finds the second copy of Apotheosis. His Hysteria should be able to remove everything on the board because the Inferno will have 2 health remaining. He can just hero power it down.
This Shadow Form Hero Power is putting in work, honestly.
Getting a lot of value. Power Infusion, just a little bit too pricey for him to hero power and continue. You can use a second copy of Apotheosis, though, which I'm not against, although it does take away his, Blade Master Samuro swing, but he's got Power Infusion now.
Yeah.
Oh, he has Condemn in hand, that's right.
Yeah, he has Condemn.
Ah. Okay, so I thought he wanted to remove this Inferno. He chooses to leave it alive. I suppose he feels like that Condemn can get a lot more value, right? Because he has Blade Master Samuro and the Apotheosis for a big life swing, and then Condemn can clear off this other 3 health. So that makes sense to me. This is a lot more problematic, but he does have Soul Mirror to deal with it. Rami has not been pushing the life totals. He saw 1 Flesh Giant be burned. I am curious how much he wants to wait for it, though, right? Because it's getting to the end of the game. You don't win unless your opponent's life points go to 0. And fatigue helps accelerate that. So I do like this attack. I think Rami has done a good job stalling to get to that point.
Still a little bit of ways left to go. Muzzy does have a really good clear with Condemn plus the Hero Power and Initiation actually gives him a 9/9 taunt. It works out perfectly, right? Because Condemn, then 2, and then the extra 4 from Initiation. So he actually gets to turn things on his side. He still has Soul Mirror, still has Blade Master Samuro plus Apotheosis. One thing is, Rami still knows Mind Render. There's still the Mind Render possibilities. So maybe that's why Rami's been quick to play his cheaper stuff in his hand. Like the turn where he said where he's shuffling in Soul Fragments. Maybe he wanted to play those cheap cards that Muzzy wouldn't be able to play those cheap cards on his side of the board and leave him with just a really expensive hand to Mind Render instead. Last card is the Flesh Giant.
Okay, so from Muzzy's perspective, what can Mind Render Lucia do? He knows that there's still primes left in the deck. That's probably in the hand now. Knows about the Void Drinkers, knows about the Twisting Nether. Those are all still kind of useless in his mind. So is it instead like a Ysera turn here while he has the opportunity to drop it? Can start with the Raised Dead. Baj Prime, very useless in this situation. We talked about how you might just get those minions you got back that don't have any value or any purpose here.
Yeah.
No time.
Yeah, Vash Prime is just terrible. Just absolutely terrible. He needed those Mage Scribes to try and even just give him a chance.
Yep, and Rami marches closer to finding that inevitability. Having a little bit too many resources. Soul Fragments collecting.
Okay.
So last card is a Soul Fragment.
Yeah, it is. So this is what both players are working with now, is this. And 1, I just like the quality of Rami's hand better. He's got a Solarian Prime. And 2, he makes a 6/6 every turn. So the one caveat to that is the Mind Render or Lucia, but there's really just nothing that's going to be able to be dumped from Muzzy, at least from Rami's hand, once Muzzy swaps, that makes the Mind Render Lucia worth it. So
It's true. If he had the ability to, say, play Mind Render Lucia and then a powerful card like the Solarian Prime, much more different story. But since that mana change, it does make a very big deal. Ysera comes down, getting Muzzy some tempo.
yep.
But, as we talked about, Rami's in a situation where he's kind of okay with that. I will say that it is a little bit sad that we never got Void Drinkers down, given how much opportunity there's been, but Rami is okay with it. Maybe he feels like every bit of healing is important, and the Void Drinker stats aren't that relevant. If it's coming down to fatigue, and your deck is just a lot of removal, maybe it just comes down to pure life total differences.
This is interesting because Solarian Prime could work against Rami. There's many card draw spells. There's Cram Session, there's Arcane Intellect, there's Refreshing Spring Water that it could cast. It could also cast Burn, but there's and Secrets. There's a bunch of a mixed bag, so it is a little bit risky to play at the moment.
How shall I destroy you?
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, Rami ends up playing the Void Drinker and a Hero Power, still keeping it a little bit closer. I like that he's not playing Armor Vendor, not trying to make it easier for Muzzy to survive just yet, unless he needs it. Now, Muzzy has Sarah Awakens.
Yep. Sarah Awakens and a Hero Power just to leave Rami with the same exact board he had on the previous turn.
Yes.
I don't think he wants to use Apotheosis on this Ysera, just because Blade Master Armor, Apotheosis, and Nightmare is a great way to not only clear a board, but also get back up a huge amount of life total.
Right.
He might feel like he can play like a Laughing Sister or an Emerald Drake on the backside of this, because he would have 5 mana left available.
Yeah, I kind of like the Ysera Awakens develop one of the Ysera minions behind her. It makes a lot of sense because you're wiping and trying to push the tempo, and you have that big life to rebound with. You are aware of the second Twisting Nether, so part of it is that Muzzy can't overextend because then he might run out of threats. But I like it. Ooh, okay. Developing Skystalker, trading the Ysera, capitalizing off the health a little bit, knows that 6 versus 12 life doesn't really make the biggest of difference in the face of cards like Twisting Nether. Okay, I see it. I see it from Muzz. This is still going to be hard, but I can see it.
It's doable, right?
Winnable, yeah, for sure.
It's winnable. It all comes down to the Solarian Prime, honestly. If the Solarian Prime starts drawing Rami cards, If it starts dealing burn damage, though, maybe.
Rami trying to trade off the board, preemptively making Twisting Nether more powerful, making Muzzy struggle a little bit more. As Muzzy's down to 15, which means that in 3 turns, he is guaranteed to die because 4, 5, 6 is 15 life. But he does have the Apotheosis ready to go. And he knows that Rami's going to be one of hero powering every single turn. Which makes me believe that is Rami actually incentivized as let's say Muzzy somehow clears the board this turn, and there's a couple ways he could do it with like Nightmare and his hero power. But let's say that he does. Is Rami not supposed to play any more minions onto the board? I guess the time is now here for Muzzy. Recognizes this might be the time to go for it because Rami might prevent that, right? The Apotheosis life swing is here.
No time.
And honestly, you probably cash in the Nightmare too.
An extra 10 life.
It's
An extra 10 life.
A lot of extra life.
And you clear the board pretty easily.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
To push the damage.
Full heal. And now we're in a situation, as we described, where the clock has been flipped the other way. And now Rami, all of a sudden, is the one that needs to push the pace. He does have this advantage of a few more Blood Fury swings and the Infernos. Muzzy does not have that many good cards, but what he could end up doing is playing Mindrender Lucia and taking some of Rami's cards instead. He does know about 2 of them, or I guess he technically knows 3 of them. He knows one of them's a Prime. He knows the 2 other are demons. He does know one demon hasn't been played that's been discovered, and I think that might be what Muzzy's considering at the moment as well. Like, what could it be that he's not playing at this point?
Yeah, that Dread Infernal. But he knows the Void Drinker's there, and so this could be a Hero Power Mindrender, or Mindrender first, and then just Void Drinker Hero Power. And then the following turn would be Emerald Drake Hero Power. He has to like math out the fatigue though. He's still cards deeper.
Yeah, still considering what's his best board in this spot to not take damage, and it usually is things like this Emerald Drake, the Laughing Sister, the Hero Power.
Okay.
Oh, the Mindrender.
Oh, he's just gonna not let him play cards. Okay. This is smart. He's just gonna leave him. Make as many minutes as possible and leave Rami with nothing to do. Oh my, this is smart because now he can't. How much damage did he just take from fatigue? Was it 3? Let me look. I don't see it.
It was 4. It was 4 damage.
Okay, so next turn he
4
takes
damage.
5. So he's effectively at 8 life. He can only...
He's at 2 if you consider the fact that he will be taking 2 turns of damage because he won't kill Muzzy in that time. He has to trade this Inferno to the Emerald Drake. And now Vaj Prime is the only playable card. She says draw 3 spells from your deck, so you can... I don't think...
you can play it.
Yeah, you can play it. She's not going to draw cards. And Rami trades, goes face, and is basically down to his last turn. And Muzzy has the opportunity to potentially steal this game, but he has to hope that the Solarian Prime doesn't end it. He also has full information. He has to do some math, right? Because if he leaves up this board, he just took 5. So he takes 6 plus 6 plus 5 plus 3. That's way too much, right?
Yeah. So he has to kill the Vash Prime and then push 3.
Yep. And then we'll see if Rami has it. Muzzy takes 5 next turn. Plus the 9, so it's 14. He's 5 damage from Solarian Prime. There's also a chance, TJ, that this... I mean, is it a possibility that it ties here? I'm not entirely sure.
I honestly think there's a possibility of a tie because it could draw cards. Ah! Kona Cold, okay.
Cold.
I mean, this is it because whichever player is dying to fatigue the very next turn, devolving, that doesn't mean anything. Shooting star, that's amazing. He needs burn right here. He needs burn right here. Brain freeze! Muzzy did it!
Oh no! And Rami will just simply die to fatigue. Muzzy, by the skin of his teeth, is going to be able to win this Game 1 marathon. Warlocks versus Priest coming down to the fatigue. Just a couple of hit points. Muzzy, I mean, survived by 4. How many turns did Rami not swing because he was trying to play around Flesh Giant? You know, that kind of dynamic is going to bite at Rami for the rest of the series if it ends up not going his way. If he wins, it'll be perfectly fine, right? It'll be like, okay, well, Game 1 didn't really, find a way to deliver the final blow. maybe it could have taken a couple deviations, not a big deal. But if he loses the series, CJ, I think you go back to the drawing board and evaluate a lot of those turns because it was a tough matchup, right? There's a lot of different decisions and lines that could have been taken in that mid-stage of the game.
Yeah, the biggest turn is Rami's decision to draw cards with the first Vash Prime, right? Like, that mulled a lot of these soul fragments out of his deck. It drew 3 soul fragments, which 2 of them had no healing whatsoever, right? And it also just got him way deeper into fatigue. He is benefited the longer the game goes because he makes a 6/6 every turn and Muzzy does not, right? So the longer the game goes, the more value Rami gets from that Drax's hero power, the better position he's in. So even though maybe he felt like he needed more resources, at that point, maybe you just say, no, I don't. And just not draw the cards and don't let Muzzy have any chance. Don't draw the cards until you absolutely have to. And you have absolutely no answers to what's going on the board. I think that was the biggest decision. Up until that point, I like the way Rami played it. Again, he just tried to limit Muzzy's options. Didn't let him have any chance to steal the Envoy Rustwicks. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all he could do at that point. Not overextend too much with minions, hit his hero power button every turn, not do anything risky until he drew cards. That was it.
Yep, that was it. A 45-minute game to start off the day, TJ. And, you know, it was a very long one, pretty back and forth. And I think that kind of grind really represents what this meta is really about right now. If you're not killing your opponent super quickly, you're trying to grind out the last remnants of happiness and satisfaction and enjoyment with Priest